The reason I'm doing this is because I've just purchased this for 75 English pounds.
Retro unboxing.
Hello viewers, welcome back to the channel. Thanks for watching. Today's another refurbishment video, and specifically it's this A1418 21.5 inch mid 2014 iMac. It's the slim model, and I think this probably was about the lowest spec model that you could buy at the time, with the very basic 1.4 gigahertz dual core i5, 8 gigabytes of 1600 megahertz RAM, a very basic graphics chip, and then the real kicker is the storage. It's only got a 500 gigabyte mechanical hard drive. So what I'm going to upgrade with this machine is that, first and foremost. I'm going to pop an SSD in its place, and then the second thing is going to be the RAM. The SSD is really easy because all you've got to do is take the screen off, take the old drive out, put the SSD in, job done. The RAM's a little bit hard because you've got to take out the full logic board assembly, which just makes things a little bit more complicated. I'm not doing this video as a tutorial. I'm kind of doing it more to show you how easy it can be, and if a moron like me can do it, then a genius such as yourself can absolutely, definitely 100% do this. There's a couple of things you need. One is a little kit you can buy on eBay or Amazon, which has got a little cutting tool to get all of the glue, because this glass screen is actually glued to the frame. And then a sticky kit to stick it back on once you've done whatever it is that you're doing. The other thing that I'm going to do first and foremost, before I actually start doing this, is install Big Sur onto the SSD so that it's ready. When I put it in, it should effectively already be there and ready to go. So I'm going to do this as a clean install. The reason I'm doing this is because I've just purchased this for 75 English pounds. I thought, well, why not? It's 75 quid, which is probably, well, in today's money, it's probably about $50 bloody dollars. No, it's probably more like $85. But £75 purchased me this lovely Mac, and it's in beautiful condition. There's not a mark on it anywhere. It just runs that little bit slowly, and you can see it's not as snappy as it should be. And as I've messed around with it, I've noticed the mouse seems to drop out a little bit. So maybe that will be cured with a refurb. I'm not sure, but it does seem to hang a little bit. It's not as snappy as it should be, and it's certainly not as snappy as it will be once I've refurbished it, put some extra RAM and put the SSD in. So this is going to take me a couple of days to complete the video because I need to pick up some RAM. What I just needed to do was just double check which RAM I need. 1600 DDR3 is what I'm looking for. I'm just going to do a quick basis for comparison. So I'm going to do a boot test. As you just saw, that took an absolute age to boot, so I'm absolutely hoping we're going to see some big performance improvements, certainly in terms of boot speed. So the first thing I'm going to do before I start stripping this is to install Mac OS onto the SSD drive ready, so that when I turn the computer on for the first time, it should pretty much work. So what I've got is just this little SATA to USB converter, which you just plug on there, and you can get any number of these. These are dead cheap to pick up and they're dead useful. So the new SSD is now formatted, so all I need to do is install Big Sur onto that SSD, ready to go. So the installation of Mac OS Big Sur, agree, show all disks, internal SSD, continue, there's no password. So there we go. It says there it's going to take about 59 minutes. So that's about it for this part of the video. The next part of the video is going to be the actual installation of the hard drive and the RAM into the machine. So I'll pick you up in a moment. Hello there. So I took the time after having a look at that to find myself some additional RAM. So I've got 16 gigabytes, which is 2 times 8 gigabytes of 1600 megahertz. Got the SSD there, all well, it's been formatted and Big Sur has been installed onto it, ready, so that in theory, when you put it back into the machine, that it's just ready to go. Got a cloth there for obvious reasons, just to keep things clean. And then that little Amazon package just had the screen kind of removal tool, and then the sticky bits to stick the screen back on. So I've just run the tool around the edge of the screen a few times, and then it really is quite an easy thing to do. You just sort of pop the screen up. But at this point you've got to be very careful not to just yank the screen away from the body of the Mac, because there are these 2 ribbon cables connecting the screen to the logic board, obviously. As you can see, there's a little bit of dust in there. I mean, it's a, what is it, 2014, so it's like an 9-year-old computer. It's been sucking dust in for all of that time. So part of the process, part of my general refurb process, is to give all of that a clean as well. The last bit to do to get the screen off, there's a couple of little tabs on the edges. We just pull those remaining little sticky bits, and this process is actually, again, really simple. If the machine's already been refurbished and restuck on, you might have a little bit more of an issue getting the screen off. And if you know that it's been refurbished, it's probably best to use a hairdryer or heat gun to actually heat the sticky stuff up to remove the screen. But in this case, it had never been refurbished, so it was kind of pretty easy to do. So yeah, I mean, straight into unscrewing. There's not that many screws that hold everything in. There's a couple of bits or a couple of parts of this process that are a little bit awkward. You need a very tiny little screwdriver, a posi drive screwdriver, to get these tiny little screws out from the bottom there. There's like a bar. And I believe what that does is actually to stop some dust going up into the main body of the machine. It feels like it's like a superfluous part, but I took it out and I will put it back in. This part here is the main power board. There are 3 connectors to that one. One is just underneath the logic board, and one is just behind the kind of main panel where the Apple logo is on the front of the machine there. Kind of can't miss it really. So yeah, just keep unscrewing all the parts. There's a bit of an order to it, so take the speaker out, watch out for the power cable, take the drive bay out, take the power cable out, and then you can work on the logic board. At this point you will notice that I just stop for a moment and look at the logic board, and it's basically because, like a clown, I've sort of not really realised that this is one of the logic boards where you can't replace the bloody RAM. So kind of a bit of a waste of time, but to be fair, while I'm in there, I'm going to give it a clean and a general refurb anyway. So it was kind of still worth taking the logic board out. There was basically like 2 years of the A1418 production where you just couldn't replace the RAM. I think it was 2014, 2015, and I just got it wrong in my head as to which one you could replace and which one you couldn't. So yeah, it was a waste of time going out and getting the RAM and even attempting to replace it like a douche. So yeah, like I said, I mean, I'll use the RAM for another project, I'm sure. But watch this. Yeah, so it's basically just reassembly time now. Just give everything a good clean before putting everything back in. Logic board goes back in first. Some of these things you kind of have to just like wedge in a little bit. Logic board's a little bit more difficult because it's got the ports that come out of the back of the machine, so you've just got to get that in the right place and then sort of get everything located. You tend to find with these things they almost have like a muscle memory, so like they know where they need to sit, and when you start putting things back into place, they actually sort of sit nicely so that you can just locate everything and then start to screw bits in as you go. A couple of bits are a little bit awkward, so these bits that I'm doing now are the it's the airport card, so it's like Wi-Fi, Bluetooth and all the wireless antennas, so they're a little bit awkward, so just take a bit of time with those. This is the power board going back in. Then the hard drive caddy, there's just a couple of cables that sit on the back of that just need to be routed through. And then it's going to be get this speaker back in. Just that little wire there that you saw me in my left hand, that's the power switch cable, and that's the kind of awkward one. I've snapped one of those in the past because I'd forgot it was there. I'd yanked the speaker out and snapped the bloody power switch cable, so I ended up having to solder the power switch cable back in, and it was never quite the same afterwards, because you then have to reseat the power switch. It was all a bit of a nightmare. So yeah, anyway, just watch that one, and then it's just a case of screwing everything back in order. So the new SSD drive goes in there, the fan, and then that little kind of, as I say, that metal strip with those tiny little screws, just screws in along the bottom there. Last couple of screws going in, and then the last thing really to do then is to put the new sticky strip around the perimeter, the edges of the screen, and this is to basically re-stick the screen to the body of the computer. And these are easy to pick up. A few quid on Amazon next day delivery, or if you want them cheaper, buy them on eBay, and you can buy them for a lot cheaper, but then they might take 5 or 6 days to arrive, so take your pick. And you just pull the kind of protective the sort of protective, like this double-sided tapey type stuff, pull the protective bit off, and then you expose the glue. This can be a little bit fiddly. Some of these sticky strips sort of failed on me, so I pulled the tab and then it didn't actually pull the sticky bit off, so it was a little bit awkward in the end, but I got there. It's just one of those things to consider. It might be worth when you order them, maybe to order 2 at a time, just in case one fails, because they are a cheap product. So last thing to do with the screen is just pull off all of the old gluey sticky bit. It's quite a satisfying little thing, so you've just got to piggle one edge until you've just got enough to pinch in between your 2 fingers, and then just pull it gently and it'll all peel off. Just clean off the rest of the back of the screen there. pull off the rest of that little bit of sticky glue. At that point, I just realised that I'd not connected the camera, the webcam camera, back to the logic board. So maybe in the next shot you'll see that I just make sure so it's always worth, before you put the screen back on, just do a quick double check. Yeah, there I go, look, I'd just not reconnected the camera. So you don't want to be sticking the screen back on and not have connected everything back on. So just make sure you've reconnected the speakers and well, everything really. And then this bit's a little bit awkward because you've got to try not to stick the screen back to the Mac, you know, like all in one, because you've got to give it the reach around and plug those two last ribbon cables back to the logic board. It's easy enough to do, you've just got to take your time a bit. So yeah, all done. Give the screen a little bit of a glass clean, and I had a look around it straight afterwards, and it's lovely. It's like new. I cannot believe I picked that up for 75 quid. So the last things to do now are to test it. So plug it in. This is genuinely the first time I've turned it back on since doing it. Obviously I did this straight after, but this is the first turn on. I've sped that up a little bit. It actually took about a minute to turn on for the first time, so I'm just sort of checking everything is kind of all working here. I mean, kind of obviously it's all working because it's bloody turned on, but you know what I mean. So I'm just going to shut it down, restart it a couple of times, just check for any updates, and then I'm just going to do a quick boot speed test in a moment, and you'll see it now boots actually in something like half the time. I think from earlier on in the video it was 110, 112, a minute 12 seconds to boot. And now with the SSD, I think is this playing at normal time? 2, 14, 15. Oh, this is playing at normal time. So this actually boots now in 32 seconds or so. So basically what I've got here is a 75 quid Mac, a 50 quid SSD, not been able to do the RAM upgrade, but so basically like 125 quid, and I could have used a much cheaper SSD and kept it well under 100. So I think this is the cheapest iMac Slim in the UK, 75 quid, and it was probably still usable with the old hard drive. Now I've also just picked up another slim iMac for 60 quid, which is absolutely definitely the cheapest in the UK. So that's going to be my next project. So thanks very much for watching this video. Hope you've enjoyed it. Like I said earlier, it's not a tutorial, but if you can take a bit of confidence that someone like me can do this, then you definitely can. So thanks very much for watching, and hopefully I'll catch you on the next one. I'll be back to doing some console unboxings soon as well. Alright, thanks for your time. See you again soon. Bye now.
Retro Unboxing.